Dentistry in General Radio Network presents the Independent Dental Practice Podcast with Dr. Sonny Spira. In this episode,
welcome to the Independent Dental Practice Podcast, Dr. Sonny Spira. Today our guest, Dr. Lejla Straits. She's got a really interesting story. We had talked to her before when she was doing her startup. She was coming out of the military. She'd finished her service. She did her startup, and she has a passion for dental sleep medicine and children and a lot of things. And after a couple years, she had some serious physical ailments, headaches, migraines. She had musculoskeletal conditions, including cervical spine stenosis. We're going to talk about what it was like to do the startup and then what it was like to get out of the startup and move on to what she's doing now in her next phase is working as an associate. And she's also a sub or a locum tenens. Like, really fascinating story. She's a great person, just pure, sweet, and honest. I think you'll really enjoy this show. If you want to reach me, you can email me, independentdentalpractice@gmail.com or sonnyspira@gmail.com. Or you can always call me or text me 607-624-2962. If you like the show, click share it with your friends, subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube as well. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the show.
Lessons from a dental startup, burnout, bankruptcy, and a fresh start. Dr. Sonny Spira interviews Dr. Lejla Straits.
Welcome to the Independent Dental Practice Podcast, Dr. Sonny Spira. Today, my guest is Dr. Lejla Straits, who's an old friend. We had talked to her as she got into her startup out of the military. So I'm going to give you a little background. And this is going to be an interesting show because we're going to talk about what it takes to get out of your practice. Because she had a startup and as of 3 months ago, closed it. And I mean, I'm sure she's got more than enough lessons to pass along to all of us. So this should be a fun episode. Dr. Lejla Straits earned her DMD from Tufts University School of Dental Medicine in 2017. She then served as an active duty dental officer in the Army at Fort Bragg, North Carolina until 2022. Following that, she became the proud owner of Smiles in the Pines, a de novo dental practice, which means startup. However, after 2.5 years dedicated service, she made the difficult decision to close her office due to provider burnout and a diagnosis of cervical spine stenosis, along with other musculoskeletal conditions. Embracing a new chapter, she transitioned into the associate lifestyle, prioritizing self-care while remaining an engaged member of her community through her church, her children's sports activities, and other things. Additionally, she is a diplomat with the American Board of Dental Sleep Medicine, reflecting her commitment to expand her expertise in dental sleep medicine. This journey has transformed her from a practice owner to a free agent, which we were talking offline before we started, in the dental world. And she just had another hour interview before she came on with us. So we gave her a little break, but she's ready to roll. And it allows her to redefine her approach to dentistry and personal well-being. All right, Dr. Lejla, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Sonny?
I'm great. Nice to have you on.
Pleasure to be here.
Great to catch up. So give a little Reader's Digest version of you finished the military, right, commitment. And you stayed in that area, right? You stayed in the Pinehurst area, which is very close to Fort Bragg.
Yeah, so just to give you background, my husband's in the military. So I don't really have a lot of freedom in moving places. And the area that I'm at is pretty, quote, saturated with dental providers. And having no family around, having 2 little kids back then, I think my kids were 1 and 2, or just about to be 1 and 2 years old. Daycare situation is very difficult. So I had to find a way to practice dentistry and still be in the area while still being able to be a mom. If you were to move or let's say deploy, etc., all responsibility falls on my hands. So I figured, hey, what's the easiest way to have your own schedule? It's through practice ownership. Every other practice was like an 8 to 5, 7 to 5, or 7 to 7 even. And I needed to be around for my kids before and after those hours, or in case one of them gets sick, guess what? All responsibility falls on my hands. And childcare was always a situation here where there's just not enough. Still to this day, there's just not enough childcare. And so I decided, hey, why not? I can lead a team. I can run a business. I'm a quick learner. I'll get this done. And lo and behold, after 2.5 years and just working endlessly, body started to get extremely fatigued. Everything from the mental strain to the physical strain added up and I said, you know what? I don't love running a business. I don't think I ever did. This was my plan, my last plan possible, but I do love dentistry and I want to continue to do dentistry. And the only way I can do that is to prioritize my own health, my own well-being, and to ensure that dentistry is not what defines who I am, but dentistry is something I love doing. But ultimately, I'm a mom. I am Lejla. I got to take care of myself. And so I decided to take a pretty drastic measure and just close down the business.
Okay. Let's talk numbers first. How much did you have to borrow?
I think it was somewhere around 650,000.
Okay.
Most of that money went towards construction. And the main reason is I couldn't find an office space. So luckily, back then in 2021, when I first signed my loan, the interest rates were pretty low. So I scored there. But yeah, it was a pretty hefty amount. And I think I was only given around $50,000 in working capital, which was
Okay.
not,
Yeah, not in the startup. Yeah.
no.
So 600,000 and 50, so that's your 650? That's how you got that
Mhm.
number. Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right. So how much did you spend on equipment, ballpark?
I think it was around 275,
So
280.
275 of the 600,
Mhm.
so approximately 325 went straight to construction, leasehold
Yes.
improvements, et cetera,
Oh
right?
yeah, more than that because I also got a TA allowance of 90,000. So
Okay.
after construction was pretty expensive.
All right.
Yeah.
What did you set up? What was your office? What did you set up?
It had four ops, three of them that I was working out of. My last year of being in office, I actually had leased my private office in my fourth room to a speech language pathologist and an occupational therapist because towards the last year and a half of what I was doing was more pediatric based. And
Mhm.
so it worked in my favor having that internal referral source and someone I can send patients to because I was doing a lot of infant and kid frenectomies. So it also helped with just paying money down on the lease.
So what did that lease look like?
Like I said, it was a $90,000 allowance that I was given to build the space. It was a 10-year contract with the ability to extend it for 5 years twice.
Okay, so you had a 10-year lease with two 5-year options. What was your monthly rent?
It was, gosh, it was 3250. Of course, I had to pay taxes.
Okay, so you had a 10-year lease.
Mhm.
What, if any, was like an out clause?
I don't think there was one. And the only thing that would get you out of the lease is if the business were to shut down, because I wasn't a personal guarantor on the lease, or if you got,
Well, we'll say that that's a big one right there.
yeah, I didn't have a personal guarantee on the lease. So I signed as my PLLC.
Mhm.
And the other option that you also had is you could find someone else to take over the lease.
So but that's a huge, can you imagine if you didn't?
Yeah.
And you're on the hook. So even though you're not there, you're still paying that rent, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you said you subleased. So you were there 2.5 years, call it 30 months, and you rented for the last 10 months to the speech
Yes. Yes,
person?
so I rented for the last 10 months. They had plans of moving into a bigger space because with occupational
Sure.
therapy, you need more space. But they are friends of mine, and it really helped them start off their business too. So I also had plans before closing to ask them to move out. I was like, hey, I kind of
Okay.
want to expand as well and start utilizing the fourth operatory.
What did they pay you?
They paid me, actually, I gave them a great deal. I think it was 2000 a month. And that was you being able to use, they didn't have to pay for electricity, they didn't have to pay
Right.
for internet. It was all included, just take the two rooms. And we coordinated days that they were in the office where there was only one day where we were sharing a space. And that was when I wasn't drilling. So I was doing more evals or appliances.
That's not bad. You got a $3,200 lease down to 1,200.
Yeah.
So that's got to take a little bit off your shoulders. What kind of debt did you go into practice before you borrowed for the practice? Did you have some other debt on your shoulder? When you got out of the military, did you have
Uh,
any other debt from schooling or anything else?
I did. I had my car, so I have my vehicle, and I still have student loans from undergrad.
You remember ballpark what that was? About 100?
Undergrad, I think I only had 80 grand remaining and I'd refinance it to lower payments. So it
All
was
right. So
totally.
so you're 100 grand in debt. You add 650 to it. You're going along. You have a couple of children. Talk about the mindset and the stress that you're actually dealing with at this point, besides the physical part?
The biggest stress factor was going into this whole thing. You're planning a year ahead. So with the military, what you do get is you get a pretty good maternity leave. One of the biggest stresses that I had was I didn't get to spend a lot of time with my daughter after she was born. I was straight working. So during my pregnancy, any free time I had was spent coordinating, working on the practice, all the administrative stuff, getting paperwork done. And I think I sent her into daycare within 4 weeks
Mm-hmm.
postpartum just so I can get work done. Unfortunately, that was also the time during COVID where my kids were constantly sent back from daycare, so I never got things done.
So that was while you were in the military.
Yeah, and all of because I also added up my vacation days. I think I took 75 or 80 leave days that I had saved up to just work on the practice. So
So
from
you
just like
started the practice before you graduate? You finished it?
before, yeah. So I got officially out of the military on August 16th, 2022. I had all the leave saved up. So even though I wasn't officially discharged, I was already out processed. And I was out processed in June. I opened up the doors July 28th.
So
Like
you
that.
spent probably the first 6 months with the construction, the
Mhm.
design,
Oh, yeah.
the headaches, the punch
Yep.
list. All right.
Remember back then when it took like months for orders to come in, maybe up
Yeah.
to, yeah, during that whole period.
So as an aside now, as a tip, what would your advice be doing fresh new construction? I'm sure you learned plenty. What are a couple things that
Yeah.
you should tell the next person to, hey, do this, do that. These things save me.
Don't hire a designer. That was expensive. I wish because they will try to upsell everything. I should have just listened to the contract I was working with. He was phenomenal. He would say, "Hey, you don't need this. You really don't. Here's a cheaper option." And then these designers, interior designers that are so used to designing dental offices would just be like, "You should do like quartz countertops. This is going to look great." And then in the end, if you want a new appraisal or a new design, now you got to pay them again so they can find cheaper materials. Like, why did you guys tell me this? So I ended up having to design the office myself anyway. So that was a big waste of money.
So wait,
Um,
wait. So was it a lot of change orders that added tagged
oh,
on?
lots of them, lots of them.
That's like a cab with the meter running.
Yeah, terrible. That was a big waste of money. So that was like at least $35,000 that I threw down the drain. I
Okay, so
cheated.
35 out of 275, it's over 10% of your cost.
Yeah, yeah. But that was like after all was said and done, I was like, why in the world did I do this in the first place? Just
Hmm.
because I didn't know anything. That I came in with the I don't know what I'm doing. To be fair, if there's one life lesson I could tell anyone from this podcast, it's to trust your gut instincts and follow your heart.
Always,
Because
always
my
trust
heart
people.
was not into running a business. It was into finding what's best for my family, which owning a practice is not technically what's best for your family. And I have this conversation a lot with moms. They're like, can I run my practice and have kids? And I was like, yeah, but how much help do you have on hand?
I was
When
going to ask you, does your husband have any background
no,
in this
none.
area and with his military commitment, does he have the ability to help you do anything like
Oh no. That
pay
was
bills, payroll, anything?
yeah, so pay the only thing he helped me a little bit with was marketing. So his thing in the military is psychological operations. So he knows how people operate. He's really good at persuading and knowing how to target and use AI. That was his forte and talking to people, but anything else when it comes to managing, accounting, nothing.
Yeah.
That is everything I have to learn and also rely on hiring the right team.
So you're truly a one person show then.
Yeah.
Okay, by full definition. All right, you have this lease, and thank God, for everybody listening, thank God you didn't sign or give a personal guarantee because you'd still be on the hook for it.
Mhm.
So we're recording this early February. When did you decide, hey, I got to get out?
This was June of 2024, so last year. I started to get migraines 3 to 4 times a week, debilitating migraines. January of 2022, I also had a pretty major concussion, and to the point where I had to get all sorts of MRI images, CT scans done. I thought my career was over because I had to be sent to the ER 2 days later because I had just uncontrolled diaphragmatic breathing one day. And I had lost all movements of my limbs on the right side. So it's, oh my goodness, what's going on? And luckily, After 5 to 6 months, of course, here I am stressing about opening up a practice. I started to improve because I work with the TBI clinic on Fort Bragg. So I already had that factored against me. And then I started to again improve, hence me continuing the practice. But that June timeframe, I started to get really sick. And
Did the birth of the children add or subtract any of these physical ailments?
probably add to it to include age, stress. I've been diving really into understanding hormone regulation and how can that can affect literally everything. So it was stress was a huge factor, posture was a huge factor. The fact that I hadn't exercised in 2 years was a huge factor. So that was like that realization, what am I doing? And then at the end of June, I thought about it some more because I was for that past year leading up to June, I was just in a very stressed and uncertain time period with not finding good employees or trying to find employees when others would move or relocate. And of course, with that hygiene shortage that we still have, and then there was an assistant shortage. And I didn't, of course, I'm running a practice that's open Monday through Thursday. And again, everything's on my shoulders. I was just burnt out. And I was like, you know what? I need to step back. Is this something I want to continue doing? Because my health is going downhill.
Right. So you're recognizing it early. You're aware not just the symptoms, but you're also aware of the actual malady, right?
Yeah.
So you decide, all right, July, I'm not doing this anymore, and then you're actually out by October. That's 3 months. So that had to be a whirlwind
Yep.
of 3 months. What did you do?
So,
Did you put the practice for sale?
so what they appraised my practice for was less than the debt that I had.
Gotcha.
I tried looking for an associate dentist to work more days than me, and that was also slim pickings. Plus, it takes several months to really find someone who can fit your practice. I did talk to, during that time period too, I talked to also a bankruptcy attorney because the brokers have told me you might want to consider bankruptcy if you're going to have still a substantial amount of debt.
Oh,
I
wow.
think,
Okay.
yeah, I think my resale value for the practice was around 350 and my debt was still in the 500s.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, if I were to sell it, I would still carry that $200,000 debt that I would still have to pay off. And so I talked to a bankruptcy attorney and they were like, what do you have? And I was like, nothing. I literally own nothing. Everything's under my husband's name. The house that I did own, we ended up selling to move into a bigger one, into a bigger home, because that was our startup home. And my husband ended up financing that one. My car, my mother-in-law purchased from me because hers broke down, and my husband had traded in his truck for a van. And I was like, hey, great, this can be my mom car. He also likes to drive older trucks from like the 70s and 80s. So he purchased himself another vehicle. So yeah, honestly, it came down to, do you want to go through the whole process of selling and being in debt or just file for bankruptcy? And I was like, I'll just go ahead and do that.
Who's giving this advice? A lawyer or an accountant?
And a lawyer.
Okay. Was it?
I sat down with a lawyer and we went through, what do I own? How much money do I have? Have I sold anything worth of value in the past 4 to 6 months prior to filing? What would the whole case look like? Because as a single owner PLLC, you're also a personal guarantor in all the equipment that you finance. So it was still all on me. So from a financial perspective, that was the only option I had in order to start afresh. And
Okay. So you fought, what is it, Chapter 11? What is it?
it was
Chapter 7.
so
Okay.
chapter 13, of course, I had to learn all about bankruptcies. I had no
Yeah.
idea what it
Yeah.
was.
Let's tell us what that is.
So chapter 17, no, not 17. Chapter 7 is complete liquidation of personal loans and like any personal debt, credit card, etc. Chapter 13 is reconsolidating debt, but it doesn't alleviate your debt. It just helps you manage your payments.
So at this point, now we're 3, 4 months from that. Your debt's free. And how long does that stay on your credit report?
It first hits you when you file, so that's when your credit plummets, and then it stays on there, I want to say for 10 years, but after 2 years, that's when your credit really starts to go back to normal, honestly. It's just
Okay.
on there. You do anything that you try to get a loan on, you have to validate the reason.
Okay. So let's talk about financially.
Mhm.
What was your bare minimum you had to make to keep the lights on? And were you making any money in the first year?
First year, no. First year, I was not making any money. A lot of money went into towards marketing. And of course, like everyone's expectation of having an increased pay. I also like new equipment. So I kept purchasing new equipment and CEs to, again, differentiate myself from other practitioners. I was first year. So after the first year, I was going through just using whatever I had in my savings to pay for my personal expenses. I was working once a week in another practice, like an hour away, just to for personal expenses. And then after year one is when I started paying myself. And it wasn't in like a drastic amount. It was maybe like 3 to 4 grand a month that I was paying myself.
Okay. So the profit, it's fair to say the profit in the practice might have been 30 grand, 40 grand.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't anything wild, but we were trending upwards, and that's what you want, like that gradual increase.
Now, if you didn't have the physical ailments, do you think
Yeah,
you could have sustained this?
I think so. It
Okay.
was just how much more could I take it? There was also a psychological aspect of it when I was doing work and my kids wanted attention because I'm constantly on the computer, and my daughter pretended to be me by being on a laptop.
Hmm.
And when she wanted something, she was more of a nuisance than anything else. And that's when I had the reality check. This is not okay. It's like
Right.
my child should not, like I did this for my kids. They're not the problem. It's what I'm doing 24/7. So I was not present and I could tell.
Okay. So with the bankruptcy, though, like you
Mhm.
said, it's a clean cut, right? Now you don't have to worry. What happens to the equipment? Does the bank come and take the equipment and resell it? What happens to
So I'll go
stuff?
first, I'll step back a little bit more. I'll go into July. So before I even had to close, you have to, of course, do all the legal things with patient care.
Right. Yeah, let's
So
talk about that. What did you do
yes,
with your patients? Yes.
I had over 2,000 patients total. Granted, some of them were more like specialty care. I would see them once and that's done because an infant comes in, gets their tongue tie release, et cetera. You send them off until they're a little older. So I had over 2,000 patients. I, at the time of closing, didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was going to move. I thought I was going to move to Georgia. That was my plan. I was like, I'm probably just going to go to Georgia, find a job there because we got family there as well.
Yeah, but your husband can transfer like that?
I know. He had a year and a half left, and I told him, I was like, hey, I think I might just grab the kids. I'll drive up here every month. I need a fresh start. So of course, you have to always give patients a 90-day notice. You have to contact the board. You have to contact malpractice. You have to
Right.
contact all these different places, send formal letters, send formal email, letting them know you have our anticipated date of closure is this. You have until this date to complete any treatment that we had started. We're here for emergency. However, we don't take any new patients on. So you have to cut the ties with accepting new patients. Then, oh gosh, it took me forever to put together all the letters. So there are companies that will mail out letters on your behalf. But let's say a patient's address is not good to go or was updated, and then you try to email them, find their address, letting them, again, it's just like making sure care is transferred, no one was left in a temp kind of deal. So that left a lot of people super upset. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Of course, rumors start spreading too, and then social media takes over and you're just trying to stay sane during this whole process. After I had to also contact my lenders and be like, hey, just as an FYI, I'm closing the practice. So they're like, hey, we'll work with you, this and that. Are you sure you don't want to sell? We can do this. I was like, listen, I'm falling apart. I am literally falling apart. And once you've made your case, they're like, we'll start working with someone to try and sell the equipment. Now, fortunately, I did know of another, or do know of another dentist that was opening up a 3 operatory practice, and she was interested in all of my equipment, literally all of it. So I told them, hey, contact this person. They're interested in equipment. So I made that easier for them too. And then for the lease space, actually, one of my friends, she's the office manager of a med spa, and I'd created my space to look like a spa. And she was looking for a more affordable space for the med spa. So I coordinated that between her and the landlord to take over the space.
Okay.
So now it's a med spa.
So it's a med
She's
spa.
already moved in.
They took over the lease. In all honesty, the landlord does okay. They don't take a bath on this, right?
Yeah.
It's just too bad this couldn't have been if that what do you know what that person paid for the equipment?
I have no idea. No clue. I have no
Yeah, I'm
clue. I
curious,
think
you know.
they definitely sold it for top dollar. So based off of me talking to the person in charge of the sales, they're like, we charge what we estimate is the highest cost possible. And it was sold pretty quick. So I'm sure they got a good deal on it.
Mhm.
And I took care of it. She knows how I am with stuff, so she was
Yeah.
more comfortable just purchasing it.
Okay, so now going forward, if you earn an income, it's fresh. You're starting fresh, right? At
I'm
no
starting
point,
fresh.
like at
Yeah.
no point do you have any, okay, if I get over this income level, like you don't have any limitations on your income level, right? Let's say all of a sudden you make $400,000 this year. You don't have to say, oh, there's a threshold at two, and after that I have to start paying back any old,
No. So the
right?
way the bankruptcy works is they look at your spending and your assets for the past 2 years. They can go
Hmm.
as far as they want to, but for me, it was 2 years. And they see how much you have in savings. They see
Right.
what you own. Luckily, with the house, it wasn't technically mine. And plus, it doesn't have a lot of value to it. So, yeah, from 2019 to 2022, prices skyrocketed. But we bought our house in 2022 and they've been pretty stagnant. So there's no profit for the trustees to gain when selling stuff. Also with the vehicle, if I were to have a vehicle and I can make a point like, hey, I need to drive it, they're like, whatever, you get to keep it. So once the debt is discharged, everything's fair deal. So it's you're starting off fresh,
So has
you're
that
good
been
to
done?
go.
That's been discharged?
Done. It's done. Once it's discharged, it's
How
done.
long did that take for the discharge of debt?
So I filed end of September and it got discharged beginning of January. And
Okay.
that was,
So
and I
three
had
or
a
four
pretty,
months.
yeah, so I had a pretty difficult trustee. He was terrible.
Yeah, because I'm sure it doesn't happen often in dental practices.
It
It's
doesn't.
not an occurrence. You seem readily, loans seem to be pretty readily available for people with $400,000 student loans, and they're going to take on $1
Yeah.
million. It's a big tamale, you know?
Yeah, I didn't get my student loans discharged. So there are things that you cannot
Sure.
get discharged unless you file for more stuff. But they do really, because you have to meet with the creditors too and the trustee, and you do this like Zoom call and you sit through it until it's your turn, listen to everyone else's case. And they mostly want to understand that, hey, you're doing this in good faith. For me, it was again, like I started getting chronic headaches, my health was deteriorating. I literally cannot work more than 3 days a week. I have to get my health back in order, which is what I've been doing.
But
And
that's your plan moving forward, to work 3 days a week. Is that correct?
honestly, I think I'm good to work 4 days a week now. It's like I've
Well,
worked
don't
myself
be
up.
pushing yourself already.
I'm not.
You're
So
only out of it for a couple months here.
the first month, I started doing yoga twice a week.
Hmm.
I started going to church every single Sunday. I started signing my kids up for every sport that they want to do, slash that I want to bring them to. I
Hmm.
have been making time to go to the gym again. And I started off temping 2 days a week. And then I started a kind of like a 90-day working period with this one practice. And I've been working there twice a week and then temping 1 to 2 times a week. And I've been good as long as I keep moving and not have like a stressor during the time I'm not in chair. I've been fine. So
So what does that look like? What does it look like financially as a temp?
great.
Yeah.
So on average, I make anywhere, depending on the practice, anywhere from 125 to 140 an hour. And it's not like you're doing anything complex either. It's like hygiene checks, you'll do an emergency, you'll do a filling here and there, maybe a crown. If you're there for more, like for an
So
extension,
6 or 8 hour day.
like it all depends. One practice, I sometimes do 11 hours. They're like an 11-hour a day. Yeah, again, it's not bad.
Yeah, but you better be careful with yourself. So let's say if you do a 10-hour day, right, you're talking about 1,200 to 1,300 hours for that day.
Yeah,
So if you do two temps, 2 weeks, 2 temps, excuse me, temp twice per week. Let's say you're bringing $2,000 a month, a week home for 2 days of temping,
that's
right?
just for two. Yeah.
That's two. So now if you add another day or two in
Mhm.
private practice, what does that look like for you?
And like for the ones that I'm working at right now,
Yeah, what does that look like? What is that for you? Like, because you're not fresh out of school,
no.
you're not with no experience, you have
Mhm.
a whole set of skills that you're walking through the door with. What does that look like for yourself in terms of your income earning ability?
Way higher than that. But here's the thing with the place that I've been doing my work in period, I don't have a lot of, so I'm technically right now trying to find a place where I can utilize all my skill sets because I know what my potential is. And with some practices, they're not ready to hand over treatment to you. So you start off on a fresh plate, just seeing like new patient emergencies or new patient exams. But there are those practices that I'm trying to find where you can start doing some more procedures. One practice that I've been interviewing with is looking to fill the associate schedule before their own. And I had been working in a clinic where the owner wants to fill their schedule and then throw anything else onto mine. And I was like, that's when you've had a decade of training.
What's your perfect scenario then? Here's my guess. You can
Mhm.
tell me how crazy I am. You find a practice where you can have your practice within a practice. And right, so you have a niche, right? Not a lot of people do a lot of sleep, and not a lot of people are working on infants and small children like that, right?
Mhm.
So if you were able to do that, and then you had some ownership of that portion within another practice. Now, what is your ideal scenario?
Do you mean like a partnership?
Yeah, but yes, but it's almost okay. It's almost like it's a general dental practice, and we have a pediatric component, right? Component. And the pediatric component, they have a partnership ownership. It's a different deal than if they're just working as an associate, right?
Yeah.
They have a little more say over it. They hire some of their own staff, almost like an independent contractor relationship,
Yeah.
but more of a partnership type of thing.
Yeah.
So
No,
you can't be gone the next day once you've built it
yeah.
up.
Yeah. That is my ideal. And that's what I'm trying to establish. I'm not, trying to be an associate just to do fill in dentistry. That is not the goal, but also finding that ideal practice that is open and wanting to expand services is probably going to be my ideal place to practice. One that still takes holistic, whole care um seriously, and that's like their core of their practice.
Mhm.
And then always advancing with new technology. Of course, finding that is difficult. It takes time. This is
Mhm.
why I've been temping. Having that control over my schedule has definitely helped until I can find that quote partnership or potential future partnership.
All right. So how many, and you see yourself doing this, what, 3 days a week then, or 4?
Ideally, if it's here's the thing, I don't mind working long hours if it's just 3 days a week. 4 days a week would be the max.
You got your kids signed up in a lot of different things. You can't have conflict where you're seeing patients at 4 and you got to get Johnny over to the ball field.
Well, honestly, a lot of the sports stuff is like at 6 o'clock.
Oh, 6 p.m.
Some games are at 7, believe it or
Okay.
not.
All right. Okay.
It's like a 6, 7 p.m. kind of deal. And I was like, you know what? Not bad, but it also interferes with supper. So you're struggling. But it's a very family-oriented community. And I
Mhm.
think that's why they postpone training if they have training or practice till 5, 6, and then 7. If it's basketball, it's the only one in baseball that I've seen that has 7 p.m. practices.
Basketball's the best one anyway, but that's another story. And we're going to wrap this up shortly. As a person with 2020 rear view vision now that you have, give me 2 or 3 things that you did then as your startup that you would do differently now?
hmm
And
Number one,
yeah,
hire a consultant company. I've heard great things about them. Having someone to guide you through stuff
a
would
consultant
be
for what part though? What do you mean?
practice like a startup practice. And there are quite a few of them. I
So
never
is it more a consultant for the business part or more for the actual physical startup build up?
the physical startup and business.
That's a big ask.
I know it is,
Yeah.
but I would have
Okay.
invested that money into it because I ended up taking like trying to fix things afterwards.
You paid a steep learning curve for yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
Um,
great. That's number one. Good.
Two, take your time with hiring a good team. Hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
That was sometimes I was desperate during that time period. I was like, just come on board. Can you work
Sure.
tomorrow? And then three, if you have doubts, don't do it.
Go further.
If you ever doubt starting up, don't do it. I don't think you're ready. Startups are for someone who is 100% does not see themselves doing anything else.
All
Or
right.
the other one is purchase instead of do a startup buyout.
Buy another practice. So number 3 really is you got to be all in then, right?
Yeah, you have to be all in. I
And
was,
being a mom made it very difficult to do that, right?
it was like I started off the podcast. Business ownership was not my drive. It was patient care and dentistry and flexibility.
But you also said you wanted a priority, not just your physical health, of being there and present with your
Mhm.
children.
Exactly. And you
And
can
that's
do that with,
admirable. There's nothing
yeah,
wrong with that. But you
yeah,
can't lie to yourself and say, I want to do this, but you really don't. So don't you think
yeah.
that more time spent like introspection is more important?
hmm
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Good lessons. All right. Now, if people want to reach you and follow up, because I know a lot of people that do listen to this, they don't want to contact me, but they do want to talk to the people that I talk to. So
No,
I'm
it's
trying to
true.
do it. So how do they reach you?
So you can go on my Instagram. It's Dr. Straits DMD. And then my email, if anyone wants to personally email me, it's my first name, Lejla Straits at gmail.com. No,
So
like
spell
after
Layla because it's not a normal spelling, please.
LEJLASTREETS at gmail.com.
Very good. As always, I appreciate your friendship. I'm happy for you because that's a tough, because it's almost like at a certain point you almost have to have a little mourning for all the things you did. You gotta
Oh,
you
yeah.
put something to rest that you invested a pretty
Hmm.
significant of your adult professional life in,
Oh,
right?
yeah. It was
And
not an
you
easy decision.
Yeah, you
Absolutely
got to
not.
deal with, okay, I didn't make this happen like I wanted to. You
Mhm.
seem so well adjusted after it all. I give you a lot of credit because I know there's people that they never, that's a regret. They just never let go and they hang on to. And it
Mhm.
becomes the albatross around their neck. It's not helpful.
I will say this, there's nothing worse than chronic and acute pain. When you're sitting and driving and your head hurts, or you can't sit through a walk, you can't go on a walk because your head hurts or you can't focus. Pain is terrible. It's terrible. It doesn't take a lot for you to realize that, hey, I would rather not be in pain than do this. Unfortunately, I had to get to the point of being in chronic pain to actually listen to
Mhm.
my body and say, hey, slow down.
Yeah, you had to break before you listened to that little voice.
Hmm.
That's too bad. But the good news is you didn't break, right? You bent awful far away and you
I
can still do what you love and you can make it manageable and still have what you want on the personal side.
exactly.
More power to you. So we're coming back to you. Let me tell you. Okay, this summer I would like to talk to you 1 year after you made that call. So maybe like July
July this
2025.
year.
Contact me and let's sit down. Maybe your schedule will be a little bit freer and we can have some more freedom. We had to change the schedule a few times to get this
I know.
done.
Sorry.
But you know what? I get it. That's fine. You're in a lot of flux right now. And fortunately, I've got some flexibility. We can work it out. But I really wanted to record this and just talk to you and see where you're at and wish you well. I know you're going to do great.
Thank you. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it as always.
All right. Thanks, Sonny.
Thank you.
This has been a production of Dentistry in General Radio Network. Visit our website, dentistryingeneral.com, to join engaging clinical and business conversations, explore our dental podcasts, and stay updated on our upcoming live event.